Hi everyone, my name is Mehmet Volkan. Today is June 7, 2020. I'm recording this video as a video testimony for Oral by family for these four people. So their sister Gülayşe, who is right now in Turkey, has given a number of testimonies to Atajurt before. I gave another testimony based on information I got from Gülayşe. And actually, we also wrote a piece about them, an article about them with British journalist Chris Rickleton. We wrote an article for Global Voices, and that article was translated into other languages too. However, unfortunately, this heavy case hasn't been publicized widely yet, even though we wrote that article. And unfortunately, three of these four people are still in detention, and according to the most recent information, all three are sentenced to long years of prison sentence. So let me first read their biographies briefly. Most importantly, here we have Dilşat Oralbay, who is a famous author, who is a famous writer, journalist, and translator. So let me first read this from the testimony that I translated. Dilşat Oralbayoğlu, famous Chinese Kazakh author, translator, and redactor. So he was detained. Sorry, there was a mistake. Dilşat Oralbayoğlu, born in July 22, 1962. Passport number, you see his passport number here. He graduated from the Agrarian University in 1985 and started working in the same year. Until the end of 1989, he worked as a journalist, redactor, and translator at the Kazakh section of İli newspaper. From the beginning of 1990 to August 1994, he worked as a translator at the İli Regional Political Council. From August 1994 to the end of 2003, he was the manager of the Kazakh section of Kuytun newspaper and worked as the deputy director of the newspaper. From 2004 to 2008, he was the director of the Committee of Language and Literature in Kuytun City. He became a member of the Chinese Communist Party in 1986, so he was a Communist Party member indeed. He is a member of the Society of Translators of İlik Autonomous Region. In 23 years, he translated 15 books, including Jules Verne's Captain Grant's Children, and he has translated more than 30 stories, such as Alexei Tolstoy's Russian Character. He has translated more than 150 volumes of TV series, such as Spacecraft Shenzhou. He received various awards for his more than 10 scholarly or journalistic articles. In 2008, he moved to Kazakhstan and opened a factory for production of plastic doors and windows. At the end of 2016, Chinese authorities called him to China. When he arrived, his passport was confiscated. In 2018, he was first sent to a concentration camp. Then we heard he was sentenced to long years in prison. So this is Dilşat Oralbay, famous Kazakh intellectual, Kazakh journalist and translator. So according to the latest information that Gülayşe got, unfortunately, he is sentenced to 25 years in prison. So secondly, Baktugül Oralbay kızı, you see Baktugül's photo here. Sorry, Baktugül's photo. Baktugül Oralbay was born in 1977. She graduated from the Technical University in 1996 and started working at Kuytun newspaper in the same year. So she was a journalist too. Then she worked as a publisher. She had his own publishing small publisher. She was detained in 2018 and sent to a concentration camp. According to the most recent news, she's also sentenced. She's sentenced to 19 years. So she was an intellectual too. Worked as a first as a journalist, then as a then as a publisher. So the third one is Jurat Oralbay. You see here, Jurat is the oldest of the family. Born in 1959, he's a resident of Shiburtubek township of Kulja province. He served at the Agrarian Bank for 35 years. He was detained in 2018 and sent to a concentration camp. Last year, almost a year ago, he was released from the camp due to his health condition. The most recent information was that he was at house arrest. So Jurat, after his release, Jurat once was allowed to video chat with his family, and they saw that he was bleeding from his nose. So he had medical operations before. Dilshat had medical operations before too. So Dilshat's health is not also is also very alarming. So the last one among them is Bagila Oralbay kızı. You see Bagila's picture here. Bagila Oralbay kızı. Bagila Oralbay kızı was born in 1982. She's a resident of the city of Kuytun. She had a beauty salon. So Bagila and Baktugül, they worked from the same place, not from the same office, but their offices were were neighboring. So on one side of the shop, Baktugül was operating her publisher, and on the other half of the shop, Bagila had her beauty salon or hairdresser, let's say, beauty salon. She was detained and sent to a concentration camp in 2018 too. And according to the most recent information, she's sentenced to 15 years in prison. So you see, this is one of our heaviest tragedies. From the same family, four siblings from the same family were detained. One of them was finally released due to his health problems. However, three of them have been sentenced to very long years of prison sentences. Have been given very long prison sentences. So for that reason, this is an important case. This is a incredible tragedy, incredible family tragedy. On the other hand, this case is also important because Dilshat belongs to Kazakh intelligentsia. Baktugül also worked as a journalist and publisher, so they're all educated. They're all intellectual people. They all speak fluent Chinese. So they were three of them, other than Jurat. Three of them were residents of Kuytun. Kuytun is a Han Chinese majority city, so majority of their friends were Han Chinese. They had never done anything against law. They had no problem with their Han Chinese neighbors, Han Chinese problems. When I say a Han Chinese majority city, if I'm not wrong, Kuytun is like 94% Han Chinese, something like that. It's probably the highest percentage of Han Chinese population in Xinjiang, among the cities in Xinjiang, or at least one of the highest. So they were living in this Han Chinese environment. They were working there. They were, as you see, they have nothing to do with radical Islam. So why they were detained, we don't exactly know. So their one sister, one brother are Kazakh citizens. That might be a reason. Dilshat had a Kazakh residence permit in Kazakhstan. That's another possible reason, and he moved to Kazakhstan. And we know that for party members, for example, they used this as an excuse to detain people, accuse people for being two-faced. So since Dilshat was a party member and he moved to Kazakhstan, it's possible that he was accused of being two-faced. But more importantly, they belong to intellectuals, and it is a representative case of the whole situation in Xinjiang right now. So intellectuals, I mean academics, journalists, writers, poets, musicians, they are all being targeted extremely harshly right now in Xinjiang. So this group is one of the this group is suffering hugely. So it is an example of how Chinese regime is targeting intellectuals of Turkic groups in Xinjiang. So as so a lot of articles, a lot of newspaper pieces have been written about Uyghur intellectuals, Uyghur academics, Uyghur musicians. You know, there are even Uyghur academics who are sentenced to death in Xinjiang. Actually, that's that this is no joke. This is no joke. This is such a serious issue, and this case also adds to that story. Uh, Only we wrote an article about them. Also, I had written an article about Tatars in concentration camps, and I emphasized the point that one of those Tatars was also an intellectual guy, was an educated person, intellectual guy. So these cases, the case of Marat Isakov, the Tatar Marat Isakov, or Dilshat Oralbay, Kazakh Dilshat Oralbay, also prove that Chinese regime is not only targeting Uyghur intellectuals; they are targeting all the intellectual class, if we can define them as a class. They are they, they are they are targeting Kazakhs, Uyghurs. We had examples of Kyrgyz intellectuals too. We had an I remember we had a testimony with Bubu Ajar. I can't remember her surname, and she talked about a Turkologist, a teacher, a businessman. So Kyrgyz intellectuals are also being targeted. So the case of intellectuals is important not only because they are intellectuals, but also it very clearly and very simply shows how stupid all of China's claims, China's arguments about these concentration camps, about these prisons. So as you see, they are all educated. They all speak Chinese. They don't need any kind of vocational education. They don't need any Chinese language education. They are not. So they are in no sense radicals. What radicalism are we talking about here? You see their faces. So this uh, when we talk about intellectuals, when we talk about journalists, academics, it is not only because they are famous people, they are intellectuals, they are academics. It's not only because we sympathize them more than we sympathize with ordinary people, but it is also because, as I said, this is the most obvious, most obvious. I mean, this is the group which most obviously prove all of China's claims, China's arguments are just stupid, just bullshit. So I would like to take journalists' attention to this case too. So Gülayşe has been sending testimonies to Atajurt. She's so, I mean, she can do nothing else than trying to publicize her siblings' cases, and journalists and all other human rights activists, please also help us with this specific case. With this specific case. That's I guess all. This is the end of this testimony. Okay, thank you for listening.